So I recently had a conversation with one of my friends, and we were just talking about what we think determines whether you're kind of like an elite lifter or not. And when we're discussing the idea of being elite, we just mean, at that kind of top level. You're at the highest level or approaching the highest level, given that, Sheffield recently passed, and now a lot of people are kind of getting ready for Powerlifting American Nationals, or at least within our circle anyway. But the number of having a 500 dots was thrown out as being kind of the threshold for being considered elite. And so today I just kind of want to break down what a 500 dots realistically looks like based off of USAPL data from open powerlifting. So a couple of quick disclaimers. I do data analysis for a living and got my degree in engineering, so like I know how to do math, but also this is pretty straightforward. So I'll put the formula that we're operating based off of and a few of the larger numbers to make this make sense for you on screen. But this should be pretty straightforward. It'll make it easy for you to figure out where you stand based off of the data that I'm presenting today. And as more data becomes available, then obviously we can change up our sources and get kind of different numbers based off of that. Another thing, elite is so subjective, especially when we're talking about powerlifting, which is a pretty easy sport in my opinion. Okay, like none of us are in the Super Bowl making millions. Like we're all just doing this. So please keep your head on straight. Don't think that because of in this YouTube video I said, oh, this is our elite threshold, that means that you have the right to treat other people poorly because you have a better odds. Like just be cool, please. So when getting into the numbers and filtering by all sexes, we have a total of 87,146 lifters. When looking at women only, we're looking at 28,316 lifters. And when looking at men only, we're looking at 58,807 lifters. All of this is based on open powerlifting. This is as of 2024. When I filtered by 2025, there was no data available, unfortunately. But this is what we're rolling based off of. So I'll leave a link to this in the description just in case you want to go check out your own ranking or see where you land on the list with your own, specific set of filters. So starting off, I'm going to be looking at 400 through 500 dots in 25-point increments. And beyond that, we'll just be taking 10-point jumps, 510, 520, 530. There you go. So when looking at 400 dots for the men and women, having a 400 dots score would get you within the top 15.7%, or you are within the top 13,682 lifters on open powerlifting as of last year. When we break that out to the women only, 400 dots gets you within the top 7.935%, or the top 2,247, and within men only, that gets you within the top 20 approximately percent, and the top 11,400 and some change lifters. So overall, you can see like just having a 400 dots alone, you're already going to be within the top quarter, which is pretty cool. I think that a 400 dots is pretty respectable, especially if you're in the sport and you haven't been in the sport for too long. This is something that, some people will strive for, and if that's what makes them happy, cool. So moving on to a 425 dots, that puts you at the top 8.19% for the overall pool. On the women's side, that puts you the top 4.086%, or 1100. On the men's side, that puts you within the top 10%, or about 5,900. So as we can see, there's a pretty decent drop off just across the 25 dots points from 400 to 425. That's cool. Now we're starting to see a little bit more of that kind of intermediate dots coming out. Moving on to 450 for the total pool, that puts you at 3.801%, or the top 3,300. On the women's side, that puts you just under the top 2% at 1.907, or 540. And the men's side, that puts you within the top 4.712%, or right around 2,700. So decent jumps, decent deltas between each kind of like graduation at this point, and then it gets kind of crazy once we get to past 500, but we'll get there. Moving on to 475 for the overall, that's 1.629%, or the top 1420. For the women, that is the top 0.883%, or the top 250. And on the men's side, you're now within the top 2%, or the top 1.990%, and the top 1170 of lifters. So now we're really starting to narrow down. 475, we're just kind of encroaching on that previously mentioned elite tier anyway. For the overall population of 87,146, if you're within the top 547, i.e. like the group that has a 500 plus dots, you're within the top 0.628%. So kind of cool to be within that group that's less than 1%. This is how you get there. Within the women's side, having a 500 dots puts you in the top 0.367%, or the top 104 lifters. And then on the men's side, having a 500 dots puts you within the top 443, or the top 0.755%. So regardless, if you have a 500 dots, you're sub 1% now. The group is even tighter. It's cool to kind of know that this is where you stand if you've just kind of crossed that threshold into what we're calling elite, or what we were conversing about being elite. I don't know. I believe that given how much the sport's constantly pushing, the elite status is definitely a little bit further than that. Like, I feel like 500 is much more achievable or relatable than it was a few years ago, but that's just my input. And there's still 510, 520, and 530 to talk about, so we'll keep it going. So if you have a 510 plus dots, you're now within the top 0.413% of the total population, or 360 lifters. On the women's side, that puts you at the top 0.275%, or top 78. And on the men's side, that puts you at the top 0.48%, or roughly the top 282. So regardless, if you're now at 510, you're going to be within the top couple hundred. That's insane. Because, you know, like, at least within the context of like the internet and like social media and all that, 282 doesn't feel like a lot. Like, you only get 282 like views on a video. You're probably not going to be that happy about it when you're seeing people getting like thousands and thousands. So yeah, just something to think about. But then also 282 could be a lot if you're just like having a party or going somewhere and there's 282 people all within the same space. So really depends on your perspective. That's just me adding a little bit to help kind of visualize this. Moving on to 520, that puts you in the top quarter, or 218 lifters of the total population. On the women's side, that puts you in the top 0.18, or 51 lifters. And then on the men's side, that puts you in the top 0.284%, which is the top 167 lifters. So yeah, it gets pretty interesting how, I guess, few people there are within kind of these thresholds now. And when we move on to 530, we see that for the total population, that's 0.161% overall, or top 140. Then on the women's side, that's the 0.095. So now we're sub 0.1%, which feels kind of crazy, but 530 is also a pretty crazy dots to have. So congrats to you if you fall within that group of top 27 women. And on the men's side, that's top 113 with a percentage of 0.192% of the total men's population on open powerlifting for the USAPL. So I hope me breaking this down was helpful for you if you're, just kind of curious about where you might stand within a general population of powerlifters overall. I know the USAPL is pretty dead, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Powerlifting America's numbers look like. And to be honest, they might be available. this was a quick Google search, and open powerlifting was the first place I thought to check. So if this video does well, maybe I'll spin back and take a look on the PLA side, or maybe take a look at more of a global view, considering like IPF Worlds and all the other countries who compete at Worlds have some pretty outstanding showings. But yeah, that's it for today, man. Y'all be safe. I'll probably drop another video just talking about me and how I'm doing, because I haven't posted in like almost a month, so I'm really just trying to get this off. Anyway, if you're still watching, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.